Hello everyone, my name is Patty Plant and I'd like to welcome you to Grow Live. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, join me and learn all about growing, because at Orchid Horticulture we're all about growing your knowledge, growing your passion, growing your future. So thanks for joining me. Welcome to my home. Welcome to my garden, and welcome to all my indoor grow spaces. So today we're going to cover the topic of starting seeds. So I don't know if you've ever started any seeds, but it's not really that difficult a thing to do. Think about the equipment you might need. Well, we need seeds, right? Need great seeds. Whoops. Need seeds. We need media, we need containers, and maybe we might need a few tools like chopsticks or pencils and maybe some tweezers. So, starting seeds, what should we start? A good idea, if you haven't started very many seeds, is to start something that's easy to grow, and maybe start something that you like to eat or you like to look at its beauty. Today we're mostly going to talk about growing vegetables for the garden, because now is the perfect time to get growing while we have some extra time and happen to be at home. So as far as containers go, anything works as long as it's got drainage. So I'm sure everyone has seen a six-pack. Plastic six-pack comes in lots of different sizes, holes in the bottom to let the water drain out. Also, other containers are things like peat pots, and they're kind of cool because if you think about each little pot, and again you can see there's nice drainage in the bottom, these, when you put your seedlings out into the garden, do not need to actually be taken out of the pot. Just make sure you bury the entire peat pot, because if you leave a little bit of this outside or on top of the soil, it'll wick the water away from your plant. So another neat little thing are these little discs. These are Jiffy 7s or Jiffy 9s, and it's kind of fun because you can buy them in different kits. This is 36 little Jiffy 7s or Jiffy 9s, and it's put out by the company Jiffy. And when you add water, they grow up to being these nice little contained peats. There's a little kind of mesh cover on them, and it holds the peat together, and in the very top, in the middle, is a hole in the mesh where you place your seed. So these are kind of fun because they also can just get put in the garden, and I mean they come in different sizes. This is 72. It's called a Jiffy little greenhouse, so it comes with the carrying tray, it comes with the little Jiffy pots, and it comes with a nice cover to go on top. So if you think about what we covered last year in the Grow Live session, was we covered the 5 things that plants need in order to grow. Interestingly enough, it's also the same 5 things that we need. So those things are light, water, nutrition, warmth, and oxygen. 5 things plants and humans need to survive. So if you think about these nice little Jiffy pots, or Jiffy grow containers, they're less messy than having media, and they come with a nice little cover which will keep your seedlings nice and humid when you go to plant them. Last time we talked a little bit about each one of the different things that plants need, and when we talk about starting seeds, the beginning of life is all about germination. And what starts this magical process is water. So when you have a seed, could be small, it could be large, but the process is always the same regardless of what that seed is. So you have the seed, and it's covered in a hard coating called the seed coat. When the seed begins life or begins to germinate, that seed coat allows the uptake of water, which swells the seed and then causes the little germ, or the magical tiny little beginning of life inside the seed, to start the process of life. So there's lots of hormones and other things that happen, but once that water is taken up, it begins the process of germination, and it's considered complete when the radicle or the first root penetrates the seed coat. Once that germination process is finished, you have a seedling that will then begin to grow into a little plant and will eventually become mature and, grow your tomatoes or whatever it is you're trying to grow. So when we think about seeds and germination, it can be a complicated process if you look at it scientifically, but if we look at it from a gardener's point of view, it's really quite simple. 5 things the plant needs, begins with the uptake of water, and ends with you, the gardener, the steward of the plant, getting some great beauty or some wonderful food that you grow in your garden. So you can get as technical as you like or not technical at all. One of the things that I like to see is the industry has everything, and of course you can buy everything. This is a drip tray, and it's just a plastic container that has no holes in it. And interestingly enough, you can buy all sorts of things to put in it. I like to put a carrying tray underneath, which keeps it a little more stable. So you've got your drip tray, your carrying tray, and then there's all sorts of cool things that are manufactured to help you grow seeds. When I start seeds, I like to use a very small tray. In this tray, each little container will start a seed and will allow you to grow 406 plants in this much space, at least to start with. So that's a lot of plants in a very small amount of space. But when we think about containers, we're providing the entire environment for that seed to germinate and then grow into a plant. So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job to provide those 5 things that seeds need. I personally like to grow or germinate seedlings in a tray that is very small. Why? Because I can control the environment in a better way. If you plant a tiny little seed in a great big pot, this is a 4-pack, then there's a lot of media that is surrounding that tiny little seed, and it's very easy to give it too much water or give it an environment that's not conducive to it growing to its optimum. So for me, I prefer to start as small as possible, and I just happen to have some of these at home, and so there's 406 plants that are going to grace my garden a little bit later. Another option is another seeding tray that is a little bit larger. This one has 126 different containers within this nice container that fits in many, many areas. So you might be asking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I have all that stuff, or I don't know if I need it. The only thing you have to worry about is that you have a container that will hold media. You can plant the seed in, and when you water it, it has some kind of drainage that allows the water to drain away from where that seed is planted so it doesn't drown. Because remember, one of the things that plants need is oxygen, and they need oxygen on the top growth above the ground, the seedling growth, but also around the root tissue. So if you have a big container and it's soggy with water, there's no air left in that media, so the roots will suffocate and your plant will not do so well. So you need a container and you need media. Well, where am I going to get that? Not a lot of options if you live right now in Saskatchewan, because it's still pretty much winter here. So even if I wanted to go out to the garden and grab some soil, it's not actually the best choice for starting seeds. When you're starting seeds, you should use a soil-less mix. So that's a media mix that doesn't include real soil, because there's less chance of bacterial and fungal growth affecting your tiny little plants when they're just beginning life. I like to use Pro Mix or Sunshine Mix or whatever kind of mix you can get. It's best if that mix has been sterilized because, again, your tiny little seedlings, as they're just beginning life, will be subjected to less chance of disease problems, which will in turn make them less healthy or even give them death. So one of the things to do is to buy a good commercial mix that is well aerated, that doesn't have a lot of things added to it, and most of the media mixes are made up of peat moss, perlite, and not much else. So there's not a lot of problems with bacteria or fungal agents getting in there and causing some problems before you get started. The mix in containers, especially if you're growing in very small containers, should be nice and light and friable and hold water, but not hold so much water that it takes up the oxygen and the seedlings are less healthy. So then you get the seeds, and I mean, seeds can be very large or very small. I like to have some tweezers on hand because if I'm planting tomato seeds or something very small like that, tweezers are a little more accurate than my flumpsy fingers. So I like to be able to use tweezers to either take one seed at a time and plant it, or if they're very, very fine seeds like you have in some of the herbs you may be growing, you can mix those seeds along with sand so you have less chance of getting many, many seeds in each one of those containers. Or alternatively, just tap them very gently coming out of the packet so you don't overseed or overpopulate those tiny containers. How deep do you plant those seeds? Well, again, it depends on the size of the seed. So very small seeds should be planted about the depth of their diameter. Very large seeds, of course, have more energy in them, so it's less important to worry about how deep they're planting because they have usually excess energy when they come up. So if you're planting small seeds like tomatoes, those kind of things, basically what I do is I put one seed on each cell in the container or in the pot and then gently push it just below the soil surface with a pair of tweezers or a chopstick or just a regular old pencil, just to ensure that it is binding with the media, because that will ensure that there's more chance of that seed staying nice and moist while it germinates. These domes are great because they allow humidity to stay in the container very easily until the seeds germinate. Now, if you're planting in containers that have more cells in them, then it's kind of important to ensure that you're planting seeds in that flat that grow of similar speed. Because when the seeds are germinating, they need 80 to 100% humidity to ensure that that seed is able to germinate. And then once those seedlings have germinated and you see that little bit of green growth right above the surface, you want to start reducing the humidity on a gradual basis. So with the dome, you gradually start to crack it until the humidity very gradually becomes less, and then the seedlings will be in an environment that is lower humidity, so they will have less chance of getting fungal or disease bacterial problems. So when you're dealing with plants, they're kind of, again, just like humans, they don't really like radical change. They don't mind change, but if it's done on a gradual basis, then they will be happier and be able to adjust in an easier fashion. So after your seedlings germinate, gradually reduce the humidity until the dome is off of the tray, and then you'll have to water gradually. I like a spray bottle when they're really, really tiny so it doesn't tax them very much at all. So what if you don't have a nice dome? Well, plastic wrap is a nice option to lay over your tray or your pots just to keep that humidity in there, because you might be busy doing other things and it's important not to let that humidity go below 80% while the seedlings are beginning to germinate, because you will get better germination, which means you'll get more plants, and that means more produce from the garden. Once the seedlings have germinated, like I said, the humidity comes down. It's important for them to be placed under lights as soon as most of the flat or most of the container that you're growing in has germinated. So important to have the grow lights just above the surface of the flat while those seedlings are starting their life, because then they will be strong and sturdy. If you've ever started plants in a windowsill, quite often they'll get long and kind of gangly and not very sturdy, strong seedlings. Sturdy, strong seedlings will be more robust because the light is there and they don't have to stretch or reach to get the appropriate light for growth. So nice light, and as those seedlings grow, raise the light. Now, we didn't talk about nutrition yet, and when you're growing plants from seed, starting plants from seed, they don't really need to have fertilizer or nutrition until the true leaves begin to grow. So when a seed germinates, first the radical comes out, and then you see the top growth come up, and what comes through the soil first, as far as dicots go, is the cotyledons. So it's special little structures that look like leaves, but they are not true leaves, and they're protecting the top of the growth while that seedling pushes through the media, and then they stretch out like leaves, and within a few days, a week or two, depends on what you're growing, those little cotyledons will actually dry up and fall off, and new leaves, which are the true leaves, will appear. Once the true leaves appear, it's important to start providing some nutrition, because when that seed is germinating and until the true leaves appear, that little seedling is still getting nutrition from the seed. So the seed coat lets in the water, and the cotyledons are actually what is dissolved with the aid of hormones and other things that are happening in the plant, and that feeds the plant until the true leaves start to appear. What starts life is the germ, and so that's the very, very beginning of life that first is triggered by the water. Once the true leaves appear, then a dilute solution of all-purpose fertilizer will keep your seedlings strong and healthy. So that seems like a lot of material, doesn't it? But it really isn't that difficult. What it is magical. To take these tiny little seeds, and without very much effort, you grow these beautiful plants that as life goes on, you're able to put them out in the garden and harvest healthy food that you've grown right here at your home. So don't forget to join us every Wednesday at 1 p.m. for Grow Live. Join me, Patty Plant, and learn all about growing your knowledge, growing your passion, and growing your future. So thank you for joining me. Be well, stay safe, be happy, and let's get growing. See you next week.